A military officer is already standing beside your bed when your eyes open. Before you can ask a single question, he calmly says the entire country is waiting for your decision. The officer hands you a secure phone that has already begun ringing. If you suddenly found yourself holding the future of millions of people in your hands, what would you do first? Because you answer the call, the reality finally hits you. The voice on the other end addresses you as Mr. President and asks for immediate instructions regarding an unfolding crisis. The call ends, therefore you are rushed through hallways filled with advisors and security agents. Everyone seems to know exactly where they're going except you. You try to keep up with the flood of information, but every new briefing creates even more questions. The weight of the office begins pressing down on your shoulders. Because the decisions cannot wait, you are escorted into a secure meeting room. What would it feel like knowing every choice could affect millions of lives before sunset? You make your first decision, therefore the room immediately comes alive with action. Phones start ringing, advisors rush out, and the consequences begin moving faster than you expected. The decision works, but success only opens the door to larger responsibilities. Before you can celebrate, another urgent briefing arrives. Because the situation is international, you are brought into a call with world leaders. Suddenly, the entire planet feels much smaller than it did this morning. The conversation ends peacefully, but one advisor quietly informs you that an even bigger challenge is waiting outside these walls. For the first time today, you wonder whether one person can truly handle this much responsibility. Because the next challenge cannot be handled from behind a desk, you leave the White House for the first time. The moment your motorcade rolls through the gates, the scale of the country suddenly feels real. You travel toward a region recently affected by disaster. Therefore, every mile reveals people dealing with consequences far beyond statistics. The reports you read this morning now have faces. The devastation is difficult to ignore, but what surprises you most is the determination of the people rebuilding. Their resilience changes the way you see your role. Because you witness the situation firsthand, you immediately authorize additional support. Therefore, hope begins spreading faster than fear. As the operation expands, you notice exhausted workers who have barely stopped for days. Could you keep pushing forward if you carried this responsibility without knowing when relief would arrive? Their commitment inspires you, therefore the day begins feeling less about power and more about service. But another urgent message interrupts the moment. A major economic concern is developing back in Washington. The progress here matters, but now a different kind of crisis demands your attention. Because time is critical, the helicopter races toward the Capitol. Looking down from above, you realize every city, road, and home is connected to the choices being made today. You return to Washington, therefore another round of high-pressure meetings begins immediately. There is no pause between problems. The experts disagree on the best solution, but a decision still has to be made. For a moment, the room falls completely silent as every eye turns toward you. You make the call, therefore uncertainty finally turns into action. Yet the outcome remains impossible to predict. Hours pass and the early signs are encouraging. But just as relief begins to settle in, another notification arrives from overseas. The issue is diplomatic rather than military. Therefore, careful words matter more than force. One conversation could strengthen relationships or damage them. As discussions begin, you discover that listening is sometimes more powerful than speaking. The tension slowly starts to soften. Because patience prevails, an agreement finally takes shape. What would you choose in this moment, protecting your pride or finding common ground? The agreement holds, therefore a wave of relief spreads through the room. But the moment you step outside, you realize the day is far from over. Because several major decisions have already been made today, reporters and citizens are demanding answers. Every action now carries public expectations. You face the crowd, therefore every word suddenly feels heavier than before. Millions of people are waiting to understand what happens next. The briefing ends smoothly, but an unexpected question lingers in your mind. Have you actually helped people today? Or have you only managed emergencies? Because that question refuses to leave you, you decide to review everything that happened since morning. The answers reveal something surprising. The disaster response is improving, therefore families are receiving help faster. The decision that felt uncertain this morning is already changing lives. The economic measures are showing positive signs as well, but the results remain fragile. Success still depends on what happens next. Because progress exists in multiple areas at once, you finally understand something important. Leadership is rarely about perfect decisions and often about making the best choice with incomplete information. The realization brings clarity, therefore the pressure feels different now. The burden remains heavy, but it no longer feels impossible. A final security briefing arrives, but instead of fear, you feel prepared. The person who woke up this morning is already gone. Because the day is approaching its end, you are escorted to one last meeting. Everyone around you senses that this journey is nearing its conclusion. The meeting concludes successfully, therefore the major crises of the day are finally under control. For the first time since waking up, the silence feels peaceful. You step outside into the night air, but the view feels different now. The city no longer looks like a collection of buildings. It looks like millions of individual stories. Looking across the capital, you remember the phone call that began this day. What would you carry with you forever after experiencing responsibility on this scale? The answer finally becomes clear. Power was never the most important part of this experience. Understanding people was. Because that realization settles deep inside you, the entire day suddenly makes sense. Every crisis, every decision, and every moment of pressure was connected by the people depending on them. The city shines beneath the night sky. Therefore, you begin wondering how many unseen sacrifices keep it moving every day. The answer feels larger than anything discussed in a briefing room. Because curiosity replaces urgency, you ask for one final update from across the country. The reports reveal stories that never make headlines but quietly change lives. Families are returning home. Therefore, communities are beginning to recover. The consequences of your decisions are no longer abstract. The progress is encouraging, but you also see how much work remains unfinished. Could you walk away knowing there is always more that needs to be done? Because no leader can solve everything in a single day, you begin accepting the limits of one person. Strangely, that realization feels freeing rather than disappointing. A staff member informs you that midnight is approaching. Therefore, the final hours of this experience are slipping away. The day that felt endless now feels surprisingly short. You continue through the quiet halls, but every room now carries a different meaning. Earlier, they felt intimidating. Now they feel human. Because your perspective has changed, you begin noticing details you ignored this morning. Every person working late contributes to something larger than themselves. The deeper you look, therefore the more respect you gain for the people behind the scenes. Leadership suddenly feels less lonely than it once did. A final walk through the residence begins, but memories from the day keep returning unexpectedly. Each one reminds you how quickly everything changed. Because the morning feels like a lifetime ago, you almost forget how confused you were when you first woke up. Now uncertainty has been replaced by understanding. You arrive back at the same bedroom where everything started, therefore the journey finally comes full circle. Yet something still feels unfinished. The room is quiet, but one final phone call arrives before midnight. The same device that started the journey now asks for one last decision. You answer calmly because fear no longer controls you. Whatever happens next, you are ready to face it. The voice on the line delivers good news. Therefore, the tension that followed you all day finally begins to fade. The challenges are not gone, but they are moving in the right direction. Because the crisis is stabilizing, you realize this may be the first moment all day without an urgent problem demanding attention. The silence feels unfamiliar. You sit beside the window, therefore your thoughts begin drifting back across every hour of the day. Each decision now feels like a chapter in a much larger story. The memories keep returning, but they no longer feel overwhelming. Instead, they reveal how much you have changed in a single day. Because the journey is nearing its end, a surprising feeling appears. You are no longer thinking about power at all. What stays with you are the people behind every decision. Could you ever look at a nation the same way again after seeing it through their eyes? Because every choice affected real lives, responsibility now feels deeply personal. Numbers and reports have become human stories. Midnight draws closer, therefore the world outside grows quieter. The city that seemed so loud this morning now rests beneath the night sky. You step outside once more, but this time there are no briefings waiting and no emergencies approaching. Only reflection remains. Because the pressure has finally lifted, you can appreciate the view for what it is. Millions of lives moving forward together. The sight fills you with gratitude. Therefore, the final lesson becomes impossible to ignore. Leadership begins with listening long before it reaches decision-making. The lesson feels complete, but one final mystery remains. What happens when this extraordinary day finally ends? Because midnight finally arrives, the world around you seems to pause. For a brief moment, everything becomes completely still. A strange sensation passes through you, therefore the entire day flashes before your eyes. Every challenge, every victory, every lesson appears in a single instant. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything fades into darkness. The experience reaches its final moment. Darkness surrounds you, therefore you instinctively wait for what comes next. The silence feels strangely familiar. A distant light begins to appear, but you cannot tell whether it marks an ending or a beginning. The uncertainty pulls you forward. Because the light keeps expanding, details slowly come into focus. You recognize something impossible. It is the same room where this journey started, but now you understand what that room truly represents. Because the experience changed you, the room no longer feels intimidating. It feels like a reminder of how much a single day can teach. The memory begins fading, therefore you realize the journey is truly ending. Yet one final realization remains waiting for you. The people you met, the communities you helped, and the decisions you carried all shared one thing. They depended on someone being willing to care. Because of that realization, the meaning of leadership becomes clear. It was never about standing above others. It was about standing with them, therefore every challenge suddenly feels connected. The answer to the mystery from the beginning finally arrives. The country was never waiting for a perfect leader. It was waiting for someone willing to listen, learn, and act. Because the lesson is complete. The world around you begins transforming once again. The horizon grows brighter with every passing second. The brightness becomes impossible to ignore, therefore your eyes instinctively close. Everything feels lighter than before. When you open them again, you find yourself somewhere unexpected. The extraordinary day has finally released its grip. For a moment, you wonder whether any of it was real. But the feeling you carry tells you it mattered. Because the memories remain vivid. The lessons remain alive as well. The experience may be over, but its impact stays with you. The morning feels ordinary, therefore the contrast makes the previous day seem even more extraordinary. Yet the lessons feel more real than the room around you. Because the memories refuse to fade, you replay the moments that mattered most. Not the power, but the people. The realization grows stronger, therefore your perspective on everyday life begins to change. Every person you pass suddenly seems to carry an unseen story. You continue walking, but now every face reminds you of the responsibility you once carried. The experience still echoes through your thoughts. Because you understand that everyone faces challenges you cannot see, compassion begins replacing judgment. Could you look at people differently after living a day like this? The answer feels obvious now, therefore the final lesson settles into place. Leadership is not limited to presidents. It exists in every act of responsibility, every difficult decision, and every moment someone chooses to help. The scale may change, but the principle remains the same. Because the journey began with uncertainty, it feels fitting that it ends with understanding. The mystery from the opening has finally been answered. The country was waiting for a decision, but the experience was really waiting to change you. That was the true purpose of the journey all along. Because the journey is finally ending, you take one last look at the world around you. The responsibility is gone, but the understanding remains, and you know you will never see people the same way again. The experience began with a phone call and a nation waiting for your decision, and it ends with something far more valuable: perspective. Thank you for living this journey, and if another extraordinary life were waiting tomorrow, would you choose to step into it?